USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at usaa.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
This message is brought to you by Abercrombie Kids, where the activewear is made for every summer activity, so your mini-me can bring their personal best. Summer days are always an adventure, from day camp to rec leagues and pool days. Abercrombie Kids has the shorts, tees, and swim to keep them comfy and keep up with them. Get everything for the entire summer at Abercrombie Kids. Shop in-store, online, or in the app.
Today's episode is a conversation that needs to be heard. Our guest this week, Jean Young, opens the door to the often hidden world of early motherhood.
The way I teach emotions is that they're like children. You would never lock a child into the boot of your car. Right? Maybe if you were in Ireland, born in the 80s. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, my child just doesn't move. What am I doing wrong? We're such an active family. We're so into exercise and I've got this child that can't move. And what am I missing? What am I doing wrong? And now the child doesn't stop moving now that he's 3.
What you're actually saying is you're exceptionally in tune with your emotions and expressing them, but somebody told you and conditioned you to believe that that was wrong.
If you ask someone for help and they don't help or they say no, that rejection, I feel like that's really hard. Hello, I'm Pip and welcome to the Midwife Pip podcast, the home of expert information and real chats on all things pregnancy, birth and beyond. Today's episode is a conversation that needs to be heard. Our guest this week, Jean Young, opens the door to the often hidden world of early motherhood, the complex emotions that so many women experience but rarely speak about. Jean is an accredited psychotherapist and mum of 2 and joins me for an honest and deeply validating conversation about postpartum anxiety, intrusive thoughts, and the silent struggles that can leave new mothers feeling overwhelmed and alone. We're combining real talk, expert insight, and a powerful reminder that you are not alone and your feelings in this season of your life are completely valid. So welcome, Jean, and thank you so much for joining me on the podcast because I know you're a very busy lady.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted to be on this because this is a topic that I am so passionate about. So I'm absolutely delighted you had me on. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you because whenever I see anything that you post on Instagram, on social media, I'm like, oh, you're just reading our minds. It's a skill. It's such a skill. And I'm like, you just get it. You're there. I love it.
Yeah, that's the myth, isn't it? That psychotherapists can read minds, but maybe I can. I'll leave the illusion there.
I feel like you're doing it. You're absolutely doing it. It resonates so much. There's so much I want to talk to you about, and I'm also conscious I don't want this to turn into a personal counselling session because motherhood is so wild. And as lots of my listeners, I'm very much in the depths myself. And I know that you also, with little ones slightly older, but it's just different challenges, isn't it? Let's be honest, as they grow up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I would love to jump straight into one of the kind of big things that I think crops up so much. Anxiety. I feel like we've almost perhaps normalized it a little bit because it's so common, but it's massive, isn't it? I'm not sure I'm yet to meet a new or expectant mum that doesn't talk to me at some point about anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think it starts even I think an awful lot of people think new mums and anxiety, but it actually tends to manifest before the birth. I even have a client in therapy with me now, and she's pregnant, and we were talking about how the anxiety is starting now because everybody else is excited and they're like, oh my God, I can't wait for this. And she's like, no, I have to push this thing out. This is terrifying. This is what is going to happen? But everybody else is excited, celebrating, buying things. And she's like, no, I am terrified of what's going to happen next. But she feels invalidated. She feels dismissed in her feelings. So I do believe, and I felt the same as that too, that it starts before the birth even. And I even remember just after having my daughter, I think a few hours after having her, like newborn, on my chest, crying in the hospital because I was panicking about what age will she be when she starts asking for a mobile phone. And I was in hospital, a newborn baby. And I was like, but what am I going to do if she's 8 and she wants a phone? How will I do? And like, anxiety is such a valid emotion. All of your emotions are so valid and they're all fighting for you. They're all there safeguarding you. They all want something. And anxiety is a fantastic emotion, but it's when it becomes dysregulated, when it gets a bit too big for its boots and thinks that, oh, I'm really valid and you really need to listen to me. That's when it starts to become kind of all consuming and it starts to spill into, way into the future that we have no control over, or it starts changing how we behave. Then we need to start kind of like what I say, putting a leash on it, like you would with a dog who's like running off all over the place and making mess everywhere. We need to train it a little bit to say, yes, you are absolutely valid anxiety and thank you so much. You're going to keep me and my baby safe, but I need to keep a little bit of a leash on you so you don't start causing a bit of a mess and actually taking away from my quality of life, especially in this stage of life.
I love that. So not so much about like, let's try and obliterate and get rid of all anxiety, because that's probably unrealistic.
Oh, no.
But actually, let's have a balance and a healthy relationship with it.
Absolutely. Because like all of your emotions, the way I teach emotions is that like they're like children. Like you would never like lock a child into the boot of your car. Right? Maybe if you were in Ireland, born in the 80s. Yeah. If you're born in the 80s in Ireland, you might have, but not anymore, right? Social services don't enjoy that anymore. But you don't want to lock them into the boot of the car and suppress them. But you also don't want to put them in the driver's seat because they're not great rational thinkers. So we don't want them to decide what we're doing, but we don't want to lock them away. So we do want to put them in the backseat of the car, listen to them, acknowledge them, respect them, but move forward in a way that we know is rational, maybe with support from other people as well. Because when we try to suppress them, that they don't disappear. We would love that. If I could make your emotions disappear, I'd probably be, no offense, Pip, I probably wouldn't be on to you, I'd be on my private island.
Yeah.
So we can't make them disappear. So they will burst out in other ways and they will manifest in other ways. And I think that's why you often see such a huge rise in unhelpful coping mechanisms as well in early motherhood, things like emotional eating or online shopping when you're up in the middle of the night to cope with that. That's because of all of these emotions that we're having, and they're so huge and such an influx, and they're new in this new environment that we're in, that we need ways to manage it. And usually the rise of unhelpful coping mechanisms really explodes in early motherhood as well to deal with those emotions.
Makes complete sense. And I think the really tricky thing about like pregnancy and that early motherhood period is it all just feels so important, doesn't it? Like this little person that suddenly changes your world like that and feels immense importance. And I definitely remember in the pregnancy bit feeling that rising anxiety and almost like a pressure, because I was like, no one else can like protect this baby and monitor movements. It's all on my shoulders. And I think that kind of pressure that it is all on you, and it is so important and so precious and almost feels fragile in that way. Definitely, I think lots of mums that I speak to, that sort of anxiety really starts creeping out from the get-go.
You've frozen on me if you're there.
Their body, it's all on our shoulders, which is a bit unfair, isn't it, when they're inside us?
If you're there, Pip, I cannot hear or see you. You are completely frozen.
I lost you. Am I back? Am I back?
Oh, you there? You're
Yeah,
back.
that's so annoying.
You're back again.
My Wi-Fi, I've just
That's okay.
the clip. My Wi-Fi just tried to click back into the Wi-Fi, which obviously didn't work. So that's why. So I've just put it back into hotspot.
Okay.
That's annoying. I have to keep an eye on that. Where did we get up to?
Okay. So you were just talking about the responsibility of kind of like nurturing this baby and it being all on your shoulders.
Fine. I will just start that bit again, and I've marked it for the editors.
Go.
So I definitely think, because in pregnancy, and I remember feeling this in my pregnancies as well, it's no one else can monitor your baby, can they? Like, it's all on your shoulders. No one can make sure they're growing okay and make sure you're eating the right stuff and make sure you're monitoring the movements appropriately. It does feel like a massive amount of pressure all on one person, doesn't it? At a time where everything feels so important, like you're growing this little life and then you're navigating, this tiny new baby that feels immensely precious and fragile. it's such an important time. And I don't know about you, but I definitely see that massive spike in anxiety when we have all that pressure just on us.
Oh, massively. And I think we're in a generation where we almost have too much information. Like I remember seeing that really interesting thing about like there's epigenetics, right? Where kind of like trauma is encoded almost in your genetics. And I remember reading this thing about like, say, I was already in my mum's ovaries when she was in my grandmother's womb, you know, that way. And I was like, how fascinating. But what pressure for the mother to say, I'm not only minding my generation, but the generation that's coming after me. And I remember being consumed by that in pregnancy and being like, everyone like, that's so lovely. You're carrying your grandchildren. I was like, oh my God, I'm so stressed out with one baby. Now I have to think of a whole other generation. And how crippling that was of kind of weight. And there's almost, and then your mind starts running with it. And that anxiety spiral will absolutely overtake. And then you go through pregnancy, and even if it wasn't like an easy pregnancy, and you go through birth, and then at the end of it, you've gone through this horrific kind of like if take the big kind of like, you know, beautiful, you've made a baby, but take the physical demand of what it does to your body and the pain, and not to panic anybody, but there is pain that's coming your way potentially, and these pieces that come with it, and then you're handed a baby. And that's an awful lot to kind of hold. And I don't think we talk about that enough. The kind of aftermath of kind of like having to process the emotional impact of going through birth and then also being handed a baby. And I think that both of those need to be looked at, because I know that was a big piece as well. When I had my little girl, I had a traumatic birth. And I kind of just felt like everyone went straight into like, congratulations, and just kind of moved along. And we actually know that all the statistics, like that like women are actually 3 times more likely to have a mental illness disorder than men, but we don't have as high suicide rates. And I think there's this kind of toleration that women have anxiety, that women have trauma. And it's just kind of like, well, that's just part of life. And then and as a result of that, an awful lot of women feel dismissed or dismiss themselves as well in that. I think we need to talk about that a little bit more.
Definitely. And this idea that when your baby's passed you, that all of a sudden you're like Mary Poppins and you're in love and the oxytocin's playing and everything's great. And yes, that happens, you know, for some women and for some families, but actually it's not the case for everyone. And I feel like sometimes women are almost a bit ashamed of talking about that with fear of judgment. But actually, in like so many aspects of motherhood, the more we talk about it, the more we realize this is impacting so many of us. But we're just worried about almost lifting that lid and taking that step, I think.
Absolutely. I think there's this, especially if, you know, when you have a goal in your mind for so long. I know I grew up kind of wanting to be a mom. I knew it was the one thing that I was absolutely definite about, that I want to be a mom. So I kind of had this glorified image of the mom I would be when I became a mom. And then I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm not able to do this. I am cranky. I'm not good at it. And I found that absolutely crippling. And that kind of like perfectionism kicked in. And I found that really hard. And I found that I was actually quite ashamed of it, because I was studying psychotherapy when I was pregnant with my little girl. And then also I had like a whole like career already in social care. And a whole lot of that was around kind of like with babies and stuff like that. So I was like, I should know how to do this. Like there is no reason why I can't do this. I even know all child development psychology. I know all of this. So there was this deep shame around kind of like, I don't think I'm good at it. And I found that really, really hard. And any bit of evidence of, or even people seeing me not be good at it. So I isolated myself quite heavily, especially with my daughter. And I remember this one memory always really stands out to me of going to a baby massage class. So what I didn't know about my daughter was that she actually had cow's milk protein allergy. And so she just screamed all of the time, because we didn't know, because she was the first baby as well. And we didn't know any different. So she screamed all the time. She would do projectile vomits all the time. The last thing she probably wanted to do was me massage her stomach. So we were going to these baby massage classes and she used to scream and scream. But I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. I meant to learn this skill. This is a lovely bonding experience. And the 2 of us were like in tears through the whole class. And then I remember they got to like the baby massage graduation and they laid all the babies out and she was screaming. And eventually the teacher just asked me, will you just take her out and go outside the room? And she missed the photo. And I remember being like, this like, oh my God, that's it. Like, I am so embarrassed. And like, I've been asked to step out because I'm not good at this and I can't soothe my baby. And oh my God, I remember going home and just roaring, crying. And there was one more class after that and I refused to go because I was like, I was so embarrassed. So I think this expectation sometimes of like, you should be good at this. It should come naturally to you. When actually it's a skill set. And it really does take a tribe around you as well to learn how to do it. Even if you physically know how to do the behaviors, the emotional load and the mental load, and even the energy that it takes to go into it is something that I think we often overlook. Well, I overlooked certainly anyway.
Oh, like 1,000,000%. I so resonate with those feelings. My first, I felt that shame, that embarrassment, for a slightly different reason, in that once he got a little bit older, he was just slow. I hate using that term with like developmental things. Actually, my second is turning out to be exactly the same, so I'm not bothered at all this time. But my first was that kind of slower baby. So whenever we'd go to classes and babies were like crawling around and pulling up and rolling over, and my little boy just sat there clapping everyone. And all the mums going, oh, isn't he so lovely? Isn't he so happy? Isn't he like, he was babbling away? And I was there like, oh my goodness, like my child just doesn't move. What am I doing wrong? Like, we're such an active family. We're so into exercise and I've got this child that can't move. And what am I missing? What am I doing wrong? And now the child doesn't stop moving now that he's 3. But in that moment, I remember walking back from one in like floods of tears because I was like, I'm clearly failing at him meeting his developmental milestones. We put such a pressure and comparison. And I think comparison in motherhood is such a joy killer, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think when it's a vulnerability and we feel vulnerable in it, we naturally compare to see where we are, to measure against. And it's that piece of not feeling good that can be so, so crippling in it. And actually, I remember one of the best advice I've ever gotten in motherhood was no one will ever ask you to put on your CV what age you were toilet trained, what age you started walking, what age you started talking. Once they start doing those things, no one cares anymore. You know, but we set such a criteria on like the doing it where they're peers and we're constantly comparing. But in adulthood, do you even know? Do you know what age you were when you started walking? Do you know what age you? None of us know. No. But we put such an importance on it when we're the parent of it.
Yeah. And all that time I spent with my first worrying about this, I couldn't tell you now when he started walking. I can't even remember now. But at the time, it was so all-consuming. Crazy.
Yeah.
But it is, I think, it's that constant, and it is constant, isn't it? I think that's the really hard thing with parenthood is there isn't like a pause button because it is, especially with a new baby, it's 24/7, isn't it? Let's be honest. It is always there. It feels so all-consuming. I think, like addressing that at 2 a.m. feels different to addressing those feelings at 2 p.m. Like that sleep deprivation, that relentlessness.
Yeah, and that sleep deprivation makes such an impact upon your emotional well-being too. Like your ability to sit with emotions, your ability to communicate them, your ability to even understand them really comes right down. And there's like this even part of psychology, and I think it very much ties into early motherhood, where it's called the caregiving complex, where they actually did like brain scans of people who are chronic caregivers, right? So 24/7 caregiving, really intense. So whether that's babies or maybe it's like elderly parents or sick relatives or whoever, and it actually shrinks the part of your brain that holds self-concept. So how you see yourself, your self-awareness, your identity, that part of your brain shrinks to make space for caregiving. So when we lose ourselves in motherhood, we actually do. Like your brain actually shrinks it. But we do have neuroplasticity as well. So anybody listening, if you're panicking, it comes back again. But we just need to give it the space to come back and to lean into it and develop it a little bit further.
Yeah, that losing yourself is really interesting, isn't it? Because I think we hear it so much. Is it avoidable, Jean? Can we avoid losing ourselves, or is there an element of, because it's such a shift, isn't it? Especially I think when you have your first baby and you go from non-mother to mother, like that time is a really turbulent one.
I think it's probably an individual experience. I think losing yourself is probably, maybe my language is a bit too harsh in that. And maybe it's, the way I view it is like seasons. You're into the next season of your life. And maybe it's about in time, like, because I hate this whole thing of like finding yourself again, or getting back your pre-baby body. I hate, don't get me started on that. But like this kind of thing of like getting yourself back, but that version of you is gone. And I do think that there's an element where we have to grieve the past version, but it doesn't mean that what is coming your way is necessarily bad. It's just it's the new season of us, and it's about finding it and claiming it, but also give yourself patience and settling into it. I think motherhood is one of the biggest like transformations literally overnight that we go into. And I think by being with authentic other mothers who will kind of like sit with you and go, oh yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Or yeah, I'm exhausted too. Because I remember being surrounded by, none of my friends had babies when I had my first baby. So I was going to lots of mother groups. And I still don't know if I fully believe this. In a group of 12 women, all their babies were sleeping through the night.
Oh,
mine woke up every
please.
45 minutes. And I was like, what? What am I doing wrong?
Oh my goodness.
So like by sitting with authentic other women who can say, yeah, this is hard, and you can share in it together. I think there's that camaraderie then where, you know, you feel like you're moving through it with like-minded people, which can be really, really helpful.
Yeah. And if you have got a newborn that's sleeping through the night, please just don't tell anyone. Like no other new mum will do that.
Yeah, no, keep that joy to yourself.
Keep that little bit of information quiet. It's not a way to make new mum friends, is it? Like, here's my 6-week-old baby that's sleeping 12 hours at night. Good for you, really. Good for you.
Yeah. I remember seeing a brilliant Reddit post, and it was like a new mum who said that she made an agreement with her husband that she would always do the first feed and he would do the second feed. But what she stopped telling him was the baby stopped waking up for the first feed. So he was the only one getting up at 4 a.m. and she was getting a full night's sleep. And she was like, I've just chosen not to tell him.
I love that. Like sleep deprivation and anxiety, certainly for me, like those two things are so linked. And then when I'm sleep deprived, I hit caffeine and sugar, and then my anxiety's worse. And we end up in this like almost spiral, right? Of like, we're tired, we don't then look after ourselves or nurture ourselves. And we all know that that's not a great place for our mental health. And it's really hard, I think, sometimes to have that self-awareness to even recognize that there is an issue, because you're just in that almost just survival, aren't you? Like hour by hour in the depths of the newborn period.
I think it's bringing in a little bit of first aid for yourself, because you know, I love to see people like out meditating and stuff like that, but meditating with a newborn isn't always doable. But to know that, to make it flexible, to make your coping skills flexible in that time, and ways that are achievable for you. So like I've had clients bring babies into their therapy session with them. As long as you have kind of like pre-clear that with your therapist and they're fine with it, like I would be totally fine with it. As I think it's better to have therapy that way than no therapy at all. But then also to bring in, you know, like I think when your mind is in survival mode, it will scream for those like instant gratification, like give me caffeine, give me chocolate, you know, let me doom scroll for an hour because this is the only free time that I have, and let's stay up later to do that, and then you're more tired. And the way that I view that is, if you tell yourself to stop doing that, you leave a gap in your psychology around coping, and your mind just kind of goes, this is all just painful. This is all painful. And what it will do is it will either lean into another coping mechanism that's instant gratification. So it might go to like alcohol, or it could go into smoking or something like that, and bring you straight back to those. Or it will bring back the ones that you've just tried to stop, and it will reinforce kind of like, see, you do need us. You can't do this. I know your self-belief is affected. So the way that I teach around coping skills is, you know, the food pyramid.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, like at the top, you have all the cake and the sweets and stuff like that. Have a pyramid of your coping skills, so that like at the end should be your foundations. So kind of like sleep, nutritious food, water, and they should be your kind of solid like 5 to 6 portions a day, you know, like you're getting those in. And then when you come up towards the top, you should have those ones of kind of like here and there, a little treat here and there, of give yourself a little doom scroll, right? Give yourself chocolate when you're overwhelmed. But as long as your top of the pyramid isn't your foundations, then we're okay. It's okay to treat yourself to a little bit of emotional eating every now and again. You know, it's okay to doom scroll every now and again. But when it's all of the time, then we're feeding ourselves psychologically kind of like junk food coping skills. And long term, it won't hold you into a great space.
I love that. Like actually I feel like what you've spoken about already so far is so much about balance, like not trying to eradicate all the like more
Absolutely.
negative experiences, not trying to be perfect, because my goodness, we know that's a myth, but actually creating this balance
Yeah.
that allows us to just check ourselves, but still, you know, thrive in that period, even with those like beautiful, less perfect traits creeping in now and again.
Absolutely. Because I think there is an expectation that maybe, well, I certainly place upon myself to be the perfect parent. And there's no such thing. You like, I always tell my clients, you cannot be the perfect parent. There is no such thing. But first of all, let's imagine if you could be the perfect parent and you had all fantastic coping skills, you were calm all the time, you never lost your head, you never got upset about anything. Your child is looking at you going, oh, fantastic. You're a brilliant parent. You're you're a perfect adult. What happens when they get to adulthood and they can't be that? And they're like, well, what's wrong with me? I can't get to that standard. There's something wrong with me that I can't achieve that. So either way, you're going to mess your kids up. So parenting is essentially damage control. Don't intentionally mess them up, but also be aware that the best thing you can do is show your child that you're human. Show them that you need rest. Show them that you deserve kind of coping skills. Show them that you need space every now and again. And that they see that growing up kind of like, okay, it's okay for me to have emotions, but it's also okay for me to apologize. It's okay for me to make up, you know, and show them the humanity that you hope they grow up with.
Oh, I love this, Jean. We had a really powerful opportunity for this at the weekend because we've got roofers doing work on our roof. Anyway, they had an issue. One of the scaffold planks fell and smashed our playroom roof, which is glass. Absolute
No.
chaos. Glass everywhere. Both the kids screaming their heads off. I went
Were
into
they in
like,
there?
Finley had just moved out for a wee, like just. And Alfie was like slightly out the door, but got covered in the glass that all scattered. He's our youngest. So it was really traumatic for both the boys. I was just terrified. And you know, when you get that mother lioness, I'm not a shouty person, but I walked out that back door and shouted at them. And then anyway, came back in and it was obviously all very chaotic. Finley's behaviour then, who's our 3-year-old, for the rest of the day was absolutely awful. It was just like talking to a brick wall. And so at the end of the day, we all just snuggled up in a little like soft, cozy corner that we've got upstairs in one of the boys' rooms. And we're like reading books as a family and had this really nice opportunity to talk about how we all felt and apologize for our emotions. And we completely like, it was probably like 15 minutes before they went to bed. And I came away and was like, I'm actually really proud now of how we've handled that. It might have taken me 8 hours to get there, but actually it was a really good learning opportunity of like why I felt really cross, why perhaps I shouldn't have shouted, but why I did, and how I'd handle that better next time. And like we just had this really great, almost adult conversation with a 3-year-old, and it was so powerful. So what you were just saying there, I was like, actually, yeah, the world isn't perfect. They're going to have to navigate hard emotions. So let's role model to them how to do that, or maybe not how not to, but actually create those learning opportunities, because yeah, it's not a perfect world. So I always feel like there's no point trying to set them up to be perfect.
Absolutely. But in my mind as well, to challenge you a little bit on that, like you're like in your mind, you went into that like mama bear mode, like my babies, like, don't you hurt my babies.
Yeah.
So that shouting was a natural instinct of kind of like back off, you know, and like your adrenaline would be high. So like for the boys to even see that kind of like, I shouted because I got scared and I wanted to protect you, you know, and maybe even to say kind of like, do you know if somebody like hurts your toy? And you would get really upset if somebody hurt your toy. I was scared of something like that, you know, and to so they understand from their perspective as well. Because honestly, I would be screaming too. I would be straight out to those builders, like throwing the plank probably back at them.
Oh, you know, like what have I? It's that thing as a mum, though, isn't it? I'm like, you know, damage my house, whatever, we commend it, but mess with my babies, whole nother situation.
Oh, absolutely. I've been on the playground sometimes, and there's been like an 8-year-old who's knocked my 6-year-old over, and I'm like, "Don't punch the 8-year-old, Jean. Bring her back in." You know, like tempting.
But all in your head.
Yeah, and that's oxytocin. That oxytocin can be aggressive too, you know. And when we're flooded with oxytocin, it's like, I will mess you up because I love this person so much that I will hurt you if you hurt them. So like it's a natural instinct as well within us to do that, as long as we don't do it. That's the main thing.
No throwing scaffold planks and no beating up
No.
8-year-olds in the playground. Please, we've not given permission for that if you're listening.
We're not giving permission, no.
And that probably leads on actually really nicely to one of the other things that I know we said we really wanted to bring up because it's not talked about enough. And that's intrusive thoughts, because I think they can be really scary. And again, we've talked about not wanting to talk about, you know, feelings that you're worried about being judged by, and intrusive thoughts like 100% fit in that box, don't they, with that fear of kind of judgment and things in motherhood. But I know that you said that actually you find in the work that you do with mums, this is really, really quite common, more common than perhaps we realize.
Absolutely. And intrusive thoughts can happen at any point of your life, but we know that there's a massive rise that happens as you have a baby. So just to explain a little bit about what intrusive thoughts are, because they can get confused sometimes for what we call automatic negative thoughts. So automatic negative thoughts could be something kind of like, oh, this person thinks that you're horrible, or you can't do this, right? They would be automatic negative thoughts. Intrusive thoughts could be like, bite your baby's finger off, throw your baby down the stairs, hurt this person, right? Or you might have images like, whenever I pick up something heavy, I automatically think like, what would it be like to hit Dave over the head with this frying pan, right? Dave is my husband. But they're intrusive thoughts, right? There's many different categories of them, but they're usually the common theme is we're horrified by them. Yeah. And they're really kind of like, how you will know that they're happening is because usually they're a really strong thought in your head and they will be scary. They will be like, oh my God, that's not what I want to happen. But what can happen is your intrusive thoughts, first thing to know is that they will always align with your values. And a point in your life where you're going to have a huge influx of value is when you have a baby, because that's probably going to be one of the biggest values you will ever experience in your life in such a short period of time as well of impact. And when you have this baby in your arms, your mind will go, okay, then time for intrusive thoughts. And your intrusive thoughts will line up with your values. So it might be like, the common ones are kind of like throw your baby out the window, right? I remember my sister, I remember her having my little girl in her arms, and she was like, you need to take her off me. And I was like, what? And she's like, you need to take her away. And I was like, oh, okay, all okay. And she was like, there was a skylight window open. She was like, I'm going to throw her out the window. And I was like, you're not going to throw her out the window. And she's like, my body is going to do it. And I was like, your body's not going to do it. So what happens is you have a thought that is so scary that what it does is it is so alarming that it sends stress signals to your body. So your fight or flight system literally goes whoosh, right? It's very technical. So we get a whoosh of fear, and we get that kind of like heart beating, you know, you maybe get sweats, you get a bit of tingling in your body, but that feels like your body can be out of control then. And it feels like your body's going to do it without the permission of your mind. But that's just a trick, right? It's just basically a scary thought that has caused a scary stress response in your body. But when your mind feels this, it goes, oh my God, you're going to do it. You're now acting not in accordance with what we think, because we don't want that. And your body and mind now go, oh my God, you're lying. No, you're lying. No, you're lying. And then they just disconnect. And we have this perpetual kind of loop going around. And what we can commonly tell ourselves is, stop thinking about that. Just don't think about that. Right. But like, Pip, if I said it to you, Pip, do not think about the color orange, right? Because I'm wearing an orange cardigan. Don't think about the color orange. Okay. Definitely don't. Okay. Sit there for 10 seconds. Don't think about orange.
All I can look at now is your cardigan. Like, that's all I'm focusing on.
And you could be like, okay, I won't think about orange. But then I start thinking about carrots. Then I start thinking about pumpkins, right? And all these other thoughts are coming in. And that's where we get what we call like a sticky thought. We tell ourselves, stop thinking about it. And if you're tired, you're more inclined to have a sticky thought. And what are you in early motherhood? Very tired. So these thoughts can really stick. And we know that 70 to 80% of mothers are affected by this. But when you don't understand it and you keep it quiet, they get even more sticky. And if you tell somebody around you who also doesn't understand them, they can go, oh my God, like why would you do that to your baby? And then that can alarm you more. These are so normal. There's so many different types of them that we have. But the best way to kind of like respond to them, right, is to view them as almost kind of like the spam folder in your email.
Okay.
So if you imagine if you open up your spam folder, right, I haven't opened mine in years, but it's usually kind of like, here's like local singles in your area who want to meet up. But if you look at that, right, and you go, oh my God, there's singles in my area. I'm in a loving relationship. Do I want to meet up with singles in my area? We don't. We just go, oh, spam, delete, move along with our day.
Yeah.
Or we're not kind of going like, penis pump. I don't even have a penis. Do I want to have a penis? Oh my God, do I need a penis pump? I don't know. We don't. We just go, oh, spam, delete, and move along your day. So that's the main thing to know. When these thoughts come up, just go, intrusive thought. Let me move along my day. Right. And if the thought keeps coming to you, just go, intrusive thought, move along my day. Give myself something else to think about, give myself something else to do. Know that it's not a reflection of your true desires, because that can sometimes be the fear of, but what if I actually do want to do this?
Yeah.
It's not, right? It's very different. Sometimes if you're questioning, is this something that I want? It's an intrusive thought. If it goes against all your values, if you love your baby, right? But if you find that the point it starts to change your behavior and you feel like it's gotten out of control, then it's maybe time to bring it to a professional, and a professional can help you kind of guide you through that a little bit more. So going to your doctor, but going to a psychotherapist and saying, I'm having intrusive thoughts, they will know straight away what's happening. They'll be able to give you some support with that.
My brand new book, Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth, is now available. So much more than a book, this is a guide that allows me to hold your hand through your birth preparation journey. With over a decade of experience and knowledge packed in to ensure you really are empowered in the way you deserve to achieve a positive birth, regardless of the twists and turns that crop up. Make sure that you get your hands on Midwife Pip's Guide to a Positive Birth book now, and are empowered to have the birth experience that you deserve. I love that. And I think one of the things that I really wanted to kind of get across is ditching some of that stigma around it. Because, if you are a new mum, you're having intrusive thoughts, that can feel really lonely, massively make yourself judge or question yourself and your mothering ability. So actually for women to know that A, they're not alone, and B, this is really common, I think is almost a little bit of a weight lifted, hopefully, and a bit of a sense of relief.
Absolutely. And I think even by kind of like, if you're listening to this podcast, like send it to somebody else so that you both have the knowledge. Because sometimes when we open up talking about intrusive thoughts, because it is such a taboo thing and we put an awful lot of shame and we don't talk about it, sometimes if we talk to somebody else about it and they don't know what an intrusive thought really is, and that it's essentially, I call it like, I hope I'm not alone in this. Do you ever jump out from behind a door on your partner?
Oh,
you just go,
yeah, all the time.
Right? And there's no point to it. It's just kind of funny, right? It just, you're kind of like, well, they have this opportunity to do it. I'm going to jump out and scare them. Your mind does that to you sometimes, just for fun, right? It will just jump out, give you a boo, and think of it as your mind afterwards kind of going, got her. Right? That's all it's doing. There's no deeperness to it. There's been loads of research done on it. There's no reason why your mind actually does this. We reckon that it's just kind of like the boogeyman of your mind is kind of what we call it. It's just a scare tactic. But by having more people in the know, then we can start to lift this kind of taboo and talk more openly about it.
And I guess the more we do that, probably the less we'll have, because we haven't got that stickiness, the orange pumpkins.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I feel like I can't have you on the podcast talking about this without asking you that as a psychotherapist and a mum, so you were training with your first little girl and then you were qualified with your second, is that right? So yeah, with having been on that journey with your professionalism, what's helped you personally? Because you've already mentioned you've had some difficult emotions in motherhood yourself and like navigated that crazy overwhelm. What's helped you personally? Because I always find it interesting when you've been on a journey with professional knowledge behind you and how that shapes your experience.
Yeah, I think it would ironically, I think it kind of worked against me. I think I had too much knowledge and I kind of had too much pride. Okay. And I therefore kind of thought, well, I should just be able to do this. I know my coping skills. I know I can go to therapy. But it was the shame of saying kind of like, I'm not doing well. So I actually had postnatal depression on both my babies. And I found that really, really hard. And I remember emotional eating was very much my main coping mechanism. And both my kids wouldn't sleep. So they both only slept in 45-minute blocks. And there's 22 months between them. So like I didn't get any sleep there for about I'm going to say 3 or 4 years, right? So I was heavily sleep deprived. And to the point I would get like hallucinations, like being up during the night. I'd be like, why is there sand inside the playroom? And I'd be like, oh, there's not. And that sleep for, and it was that point I was like, I really need to actually ask for some support now. So that's what it was. But I think my fear was the reaction I would get, even though I knew the reaction was probably going to be lovely, but I had to kind of get ahead of it. So I was like, I'm going to ask for help. Here's what I need you to do in the response. I need you to not question me. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I need a hug. I need to sleep. And I need you to just be there every time I ask. So, because my fear was that people would look too much or people would have pity on me, and I didn't want that. So by telling them exactly the type of support that I wanted was really, really helpful, because then I knew what I was coming into. Yeah. Because if somebody started offering kind of like, well, let's talk about it, let's sit down and have a cup of tea, I would have been like, absolutely not. Too vulnerable for me right now. But I will take a hug. Yeah. I will take a cup of coffee, and I will take a nap. That's what I want right now. And that's what I found really, really helpful. And to know that like the people around me love me and they genuinely just wanted to help. I think once I popped the bubble on that, because I think that that's the piece that I found the hardest. But then once you start accepting it and you start to see the impact it has upon your mental health, and you start to see the impact it has rippling out, then you start to go, oh, okay, I have evidence now that this is a good idea. So I definitely had that perfectionist mindset of I should be able to do it all and do it all perfectly. And there's, as I say, there's no such thing as a successful perfectionist. They don't exist.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think it was a point of actually asking for help? Was that a good turning point for you? Do you wish you'd done that sooner?
Oh, 100%. The thing is that it was, I think the turning point was we had, I feel like it's like the thing you shouldn't say, COVID lockdown. And my little boy was 1. And I remember he still wasn't sleeping. And I remember as it started, all the restrictions started to lift, I was like, oh my God, please help me. And it was just like, I cannot. And I remember my mom being so kind of like, I really want them back. Like I miss them. And even just like, I remember it was a point where we could only do outside contact, and then playing in the garden. I was like, please, can I go and sleep on your couch? And it came from a place of like pure desperation. But then from the desperation being like, they're fine. They had a lovely time, you know? And even one of my clients recently, she was going through something so similar to what I was going through. And she had that kind of like chronic caregiving, had to do everything herself. And she was working, and like all of her kids were in nursery, and, you know, she had all these other like responsibilities. And I said, book an annual leave day. And what I want you to do is tell no one that you're taking annual leave. Obviously tell your boss, but I was like, tell no family members, drop them off to nursery as normal, you know, leave everybody else, do their usual routine. And I want you to go do something nice. So she went to the spa for the day. She took herself for lunch, went for a walk on the beach. And she said at the start, she was like crippled by this like sense of guilt that if she was taking time off, it should be spent with other people or minding other people. And I was like, just hear me out. Let's just do it as an experiment. She went and she did it, and she came back and she was like, I'm a whole new person. Wow. And nothing bad happened. And if anything, I feel better, and I feel now I'm better for the relationships coming back. So she was like, it was a win-win all around, but it needed to have that experiment to then show we can take it in small bite-sized pieces too, and it will just nourish you and the ripple effect going outwards then as well.
I really resonate with that. Yeah, like feeling like you need to be the one doing everything, otherwise you have those kind of guilt feelings. I think that asking for help, I get that it's so important. But I think what can be really challenging is if you ask someone for help and they don't help, or they say no, that rejection, I feel like that's really hard. That's definitely been something that's put me off asking for help, because having had that rejection, you're then like, oh, well, I can't ask now, like, because now I feel awful.
Yeah. And that's really... I like that hurt, like even you saying it, and I don't even have any evidence that has happened to you or anybody else. It even hurts me. I'm like, oh God, yeah, that's hard. And I guess it's about, if it's your first time of kind of like really, because it's quite vulnerable to ask for help, to put it yourself out there and say, I'm struggling, I need help, is quite an act of vulnerability. So if you're finding that really hard, and you're kind of like, I need to sleep, I need a few hours out, and that feels like a huge ask, to start really small. Kind of like, can you like make me a cup of tea, please? Right. And start really small and incrementally build yourself up to that. I think that's really important. But sometimes what can happen as well, and I see it so commonly happen, is when, especially as women, and from a young age, where an awful lot of, we have what we call good girl conditioning, where we're told that kind of like, you're a good girl because you're helping others. You're a kind girl because you give your time to other people. And for an awful lot of people, we grow up thinking that that's where we gather our self-worth. That's how we find out we're good. So we're good in the caring of others. But what happens then is that if that's how you're measuring your self-worth, what happens when you have to ask for it? Because it's kind of like the opposite then. And it's kind of like, well, by me asking, I'm not gathering my self-worth at all in this interaction. And sometimes to ask for help, we need to have some degree of worth. We need to know I'm worthy of getting help. So it kind of works as kind of like against it. So it can stop us because we don't feel like we're worthy, and we might feel like we're a burden because all of our worth is in giving to other people. So we kind of need to fake it till you make it. Like, anybody who is around you does value you. Otherwise they wouldn't be around you. And even though in early motherhood we can be messy, not our usual selves, irritable, those people still love you. It doesn't change overnight, you know. And by reaching out and kind of letting yourself be kind of like, I don't feel like I'm worthy of this, I feel like a burden right now, let them support you, because then over time it will start to feed back as to, I am worthy of this, and I do deserve this help, and I do deserve this attention and this care. And it slowly over time, it will start to reinstill that dialogue then as well, that you're worthy of both giving and receiving.
I love that. And that good girl kind of like complex or idea is such a powerful thing to kind of bring down to our children, isn't it? I always feel like I love parenting opportunities that allow us to actually reflect on what we are, like the psyche we're giving our children as a norm, and actually allowing them to look after themselves and not just
absolutely
give and give.
Yeah. And it's really hard to parent that way because like, again, like with my own little girl, I'm so conscious of making her resilient, making her a bit rebellious, making her strong. But my God, it's hard to parent sometimes. You're like, be rebellious, be strong, but not with me, okay? Just everybody else. Because this is really hard. Because I don't know if any of you have ever heard that song, My Body, My Future. I've had that on for her since such a young age. And we talk all about like, it's her body, it's her future. She gets to do what she wants with her body. Like, she chooses who comes near her, all of this stuff, right? And I remember one day coming up and being like, you need to clean your bedroom. You know, it's very messy. And she was like, it is my body. It is my future. And I will decide what I am doing with my body. And right now it is not cleaning this room. And I was like, okay, I have no idea how to respond to that. And I was like, I will be back in a minute when I think about this. I didn't leave them come back in.
Like, round of applause. Well done. I love it.
Yeah, I had to come back in. I was like, okay, I hear you with that, but this is my house. I paid for it, and it is my body. This is your room. You're cleaning it. So, yeah, but to have that debate was really kind of like, oh my God, I don't want to shut her down in this, but at the same time, this is really making my parenting style really more difficult for me. But it can be. It was really hard sometimes to parent in that mode, but to know in the future you're raising rebellious girls is really, really good.
It's what we want. Strong, independent women for the future. My eldest boy, he gets really frustrated, and you see like the frustration. He just like roars. He gets so cross over the fact that like he can't have a pack of crisps, you know, intimate stuff, but big 3-year-old brain emotions. And so we've been teaching him to do this breath. So he does like a calm breath when he gets this big emotion, and it really works well. But it now means if I'm like, no, Finley, you just need to get your pajamas on now, like, come on, we're going to be late, blah blah blah, and he goes, Mummy, just take a breath. And I'm like, you're so right. It's so annoying.
I know, but it's so true. But isn't it such a really frustrating moment, but really proud moment as well when they do that to you? Because you're kind of like, oh, you actually, you know, like context of when to use this even. So well done, but get your shoes on.
Yeah. Like, come on now. Yeah. It is that thing, isn't it? Please do this behavior for everybody else in the world, but just not me.
Yeah. Please. We're already late.
Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh, I could keep talking to you, Jean, like all night. We are recording this at night because we're mums, and that's just what you do, isn't it?
I was going to say, please keep talking because it's still bedtime here. So let Dave do the bedtime
thing really well. Keep going. keep you away from that for as long as possible. In that case, then, why do you think there is that? We've talked so much about like that taboo box and that shame and that fear of judgment and silence around the difficult emotions of motherhood. Everyone's talking about this rush of love, but actually these more tricky emotions that need the support are being silenced. Why is that, Jean? How can we start changing that narrative, other than obviously sending this episode to everybody to start listening to? But naturally, how can we shift that perspective? Because the easy things are the things we don't need to talk about so much, aren't they? It's the difficult ones that we need to start vocalizing more and more.
And it's usually when I hear people say about kind of like emotions and suppressing emotions, usually they say kind of like, I'm too sensitive. And that is something that like will throw me over the edge, because I'm like, nobody is too sensitive. And if you're deeming yourself as too sensitive, first of all, retrain to be a therapist. You will be a fantastic therapist, because what you're actually saying is you're exceptionally in tune with your emotions and expressing them, but somebody told you and conditioned you to believe that that was wrong.
Okay.
And it's not. You've probably been conditioned to believe that emotions are inconvenient by somebody who finds emotions inconvenient. Someone who couldn't hold their own emotions, somebody who couldn't regulate their own emotions. So therefore they were inconvenienced by yours. And they told you that you were too sensitive to shut it down because it was inconveniencing them. And then what we do in turn is we shut down our own emotions and we suppress them. So we start to become dismissive of ourselves and say those same narratives that we're conditioned to believe to ourselves. So if you find that kind of like those emotions, you're holding them, but you're like, I don't have anyone to talk to about this, to start creating pockets of space where you can, either to yourself or find like-minded women who are working through the same things. So even things kind of like authentic groups where you can speak about this. Like I do think like finding groups like on Facebook, because if that can be great, but sometimes they can turn a little bit toxic. So to be aware if it's serving you or not serving you. And if you find that like it's serving you for a while, now it's no longer is, you can leave those. You have full autonomy to choose to leave something at any point. Just because you joined and you were enjoying it for a while, you are allowed to change your mind. But what I would encourage anybody to do is to get ahead of the emotions. So don't wait until they're like here and they're bursting out of you. Try to get ahead of them. So like if you say like there's a traffic light by my kids' school, when we're stopped at it every morning, we all pause and take a breath and name how we feel. And even though if you're kind of like, yeah, and usually the common one that I hear in mothers is kind of like, oh, I'm tired. And yes, you can absolutely be tired, but usually tired is masking other emotions, similar to boredom. Right. Boredom, the only people I think genuinely experience boredom is kids. Any adult who says they're bored, it's masking something else. So maybe it's a discomfort of sitting with yourself, or, you know, maybe it's bringing up emotions of anxiety and we need to move away from that. This is boring. I need to move on to something else. Keep myself busy. I hate being bored.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're actually running from emotions. So to create little pockets of space where you can acknowledge your emotions and say, okay, well, how am I feeling today? Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel a bit irritated. Okay, what is irritating me? It's irritating me because maybe I feel like I'm doing more of the parental load or more of the mental load than I feel is fair. Okay, let me think about that. How does that, manifest in day-to-day life? Is what would I like that to look like if it was even? Okay, can I come to my partner and come with like a script of, now that I'm calm, kind of like, hey, can I speak to you about something? It's been on my mind and I want to bring it to you, that I'm calm. I would love us to work together as a team to move through this. There's been something that has been, I find, starting to irritate me a little bit. I don't want it to. So I was wondering if we could come up with a plan together. I find that I'm planning an awful lot of the things and I'm finding it quite draining and I don't want to become resentful. So I want to get ahead of this. There's a common thing that I see happening where it's kind of like, if he wanted to, he would. And I hate that because an awful lot of men can't read minds and they can't read between the lines. So you need to get them very clear directions. Each morning, could you wash the bottles, sterilize them, have them ready to go? Could we make that a dad job every morning? And then that's one less thing that I have to think about. And give clear directions and make them manageable. Make them one thing and say, can we recheck in upon this again next week? See how we feel. Is there anything that maybe you feel you've been holding that we can talk about now? And respond to them in a way that you would hope they would respond to you. Because sometimes if we come to a partner and we say, can I talk to you about something? And they're dismissive, then we can be like, well, I'm going to dismiss yours then too. Right? We're going to get you back to can play that game. But that's just going to further shut down. So if we say, okay, I hear you in that. Can I ask you some questions so I can understand that? What are you thinking you would like to do going forward with that? And sometimes when we come towards partners like that, they can go, oh, actually, can we come back and talk about yours again? And it starts to change the dynamic as to I'm role modeling to you what I would also like to receive. Because if we start going into discussions trying to win them, nobody wins long term. It just shuts down the communication. I've gone down a rabbit hole there with that.
Oh no, I was listening like, oh yes, all those times where I'm like, why have I got to hang the second load of washing out for the day? Yeah, that wasn't the right way to approach it at all.
Next time, it's all learning. We take the learning and move forward with it, Pip.
And one of the ones we've had recently is like, you'll have this with like the school WhatsApp groups and like the emails and the admin, just forgetting, like I thought like we've got preschool and nursery. I know you guys, you'll have school, but like I thought that was like offloaded, like that was the childcare sorted, but no, the admin of actually getting them in. And tomorrow is World Bee Day, so can we please all be in bee fancy dress? And like honestly, the admin's insane. And I was like, I'm losing it with the admin. And my husband James was like, where have you even found that it's World Bee Day? And I'm like, the WhatsApp group. And he was like, well, why am I not in the WhatsApp group? And I was like, oh yeah, why aren't you in the why is it all mums in the WhatsApp group? So now I'm like, he's in the WhatsApp group so we can share that load. Really simple thing. And he was like, I didn't even know this was an option. And I was, that's that communication that I'd completely shut down on because I was just so frustrated that I had to suddenly craft an outfit for World Bee Day.
There's so many places I could go with that, but the first thing I think is like, oh my God, I wonder, do the people who come up with these exercises around like World Bee Day, do you have kids?
I know.
Do you know what is happening the night before, scrambling to get these things together? But also by like adding James into that, it's empathy building. Like, you know, kind of just even to witness the influx of notifications. Then, and the thing that I have is the fear of missing one, which I have done. Because you get like 20 notifications a day of kind of like, has anybody lost this football boot? You know, there's fundraising tomorrow. And then you could miss something really vital in the middle of it all. So the hypervigilance of constantly having to check and sift through things can be really overwhelming in itself.
It is like a whole other job. I feel like getting them into school in the right whatever with all the right stuff is literally a whole other job, which I had not appreciated. I thought it was going to make life easier.
Yeah, and to humanize myself a little bit, just in case anybody thinks I've been through all this and now I have my shit together. I don't. I had a big work day on Saturday, and my mental load was so overwhelmed of thinking and planning. Arrived to school on the Thursday with the kids, walked in the door, and I was like, where's your school bags? And they were like, we thought you had them. I was like, oh my God, no school bags going into school. Right in front of the teachers is all it happened. And I was like, I might have forgotten their school bags. And the teachers were like, it's fine. Don't worry. We have everything here, because their lunches are in the school. So like their lunches are in the school. They're like, we'll give them pencils. They're fine. So sometimes the pressure that we put upon ourselves when we make a mistake, just to own it.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that really great role modeling to our children that are navigating an imperfect world with us, that actually we don't need to have everything perfect ever.
Absolutely. And it was really interesting actually, because my mom picked them up then from school, and I went to pick them up from my mum's. I thought my mom was going to be like, come on now. And my mom was like, do you have a rough morning? I was like, I did. Yeah. Can you tell? And she was like, yeah. She said, I've sat them both down. She was like, they're 6 and 8. They're responsible for their own school bags. She was like, from now on, they now know they're to get their own school bags. It is their responsibility. They're old enough. I was like, oh, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
You know, but sometimes people like on the outside within boundaries can help with the parenting load as well. So like really appreciated my mum for that. And even things kind of like washing their school bags. You know, like she had a sleepover with them on Friday and she washed their school bags, little things like that. And I'm like, oh my God, I actually really appreciate that.
Yeah.
But to communicate it as well, like the things that you appreciate, but also to know the boundaries of kind of like, you know, I like, she will know that kind of like consequences of bad behavior lay with me. She won't take the forefront on that. So to know where the boundaries are and communicate that to the wider people around you who are helping you within your tribe is really, really important too.
Well, I feel like life would be a lot easier if we just communicated. If we just communicated better.
Absolutely. But you need to know that the person opposite you also wants to communicate. I think that's the hard bit. But I do think it's changing. I definitely see a big shift. And even in kind of like the amount of men that I have coming to therapy is absolutely fantastic. So I definitely see a big shift, which is amazing.
Yeah, so powerful. And I think, that traditional role reversal, like sometimes we'll be just navigating the day and I'll find myself doing all of the like parenting stuff. And I'm like, how have we just ended up back in the 50s? Like, what just happened there? And it's not intentional. Like, we are very clear in our family that our children have two parents and we're both equally able to do everything. And my husband is incredibly willing to do as much as he can with the boys, but I just start scooping stuff up and do that caring responsibility thing that you were just talking about. And actually that pause and self-reflection is really powerful sometimes when we start putting all that pressure on ourselves.
Yeah, but it takes generations to break patterns like that. And even if you think about like the things that we learn unintentionally, the things that we inherit from like caregivers growing up, the way I sneeze is the same way that my mom sneezes. The way I laugh is the same. And she's never sat me down and said, okay, here's how we're going to sneeze. Like we just embody these. We naturally pick them up by being in caregivers' presence. So like not to beat yourself up either if you fall into kind of like the natural caregiving or the natural kind of like nuclear family dynamic and stuff like that. It's the common thing that I say is that the first thought that you have is the one you've been conditioned to believe. The second one is the one that you're conditioning yourself to believe, and that's the one you action. So not to beat yourself up for that first thought or maybe the one that you've automatically gone into. The second one is the powerful one. So when you're gathering everything up and you go, oh, I've automatically done this, I need to share the load. And you put everything back down and take half. That's you breaking the cycle and that's you slowly stepping into it from a place of compassion as well.
Definitely. And like I've got two boys, Jean. So if I'm doing it all, it's only going to get more, isn't it? So we need to get that gender divide sorted in this house for sure.
Absolutely. Start pulling your weight, lads.
100%. So, I mean, we've talked about so many really important things, Jean, but are there any kind of, you've given some already, to be fair, but are there any other kind of practical steps or strategies that you feel are really prominent and important at this time?
I think two things. One thing that's kind of a light piece of advice that was given to me when I had my second baby that I was like, was so helpful was just add water. If anything is wrong with your child, just add water. So if they're sick, focus on water. Get them in for a shower, a bath. If they're bored, give them some water, put them playing by a sink. If you need to distract them for a while, give them a water bottle, let them spray it all over the place, just add water. So that was one of the best things I think I've ever, obviously supervised, but that was really, really helpful. And then the second one that's coming from kind of like the psychotherapist in me is that sometimes, and I think we see it so much around screen time, right? That like, don't give your kids too much screen time. But if it is a toss up between your child getting a regulated parent, a calm parent who's after getting 15 minutes of time to drink a coffee, to scroll on their phone, take a bit of space breathing, call somebody to have a chat or, have a bit of space for themselves, over 15 minutes of screen time, give them the screen time. There's so much research around having a mentally well parent is one of the biggest indicators of a secure attachment style, of having a thriving parent or thriving child, all these different things. So give yourself the grace. And I think one of the things I used to always see when I first had my kids was, if you're on an airplane, you put your own mask on first. Yeah. And I remember always being like, oh my God, that's so true, but I'm not going to do it. Right? Like I'm not going to put myself first. It feels like it goes against everything within my body. Yeah. So not to, that whole thing of like, put yourself first. I don't actually know any mother who will do that. No. So instead, what the frame that I use is to put yourself joint first. So when you're thinking about the kids' needs all day, be like, okay, do they have their nappies? Do they have all their food prepped? What time is their nap? Do they have their bottles? Okay, now me. When am I going to rest? Do I have a nutritious meal today? Is my water bottle near me? Do I have a little pocket of fun today? Do I have my book? Do I have my audiobook? Do I have a podcast to listen to when I'm out walking the baby? Yeah. And to put yourself in the same category around checklist of your own basic care needs as well as your child's. So you're joint first instead of last, and instead of first, you're joint.
I love that. That's such a nice one, because like you say, it's so easy to prioritize yourself, but no one's going to go, oh, my baby's crying, so I'm just going to go have a coffee. Like, it's never going to happen. Hopefully,
No.
anyway.
You won't be to relax anyway having your coffee. You'd be so interrupted.
That crying, that feeling when you hear your baby cry is all consuming, isn't it? That's like a whole nother topic we could probably cover from a response, a mum response to that is another one.
Absolutely.
Jean, everyone that comes on the podcast, I ask for 3 top tips. So if bedtime is still ongoing, would you hang around to give us 3 top tips that may well be a summary, because you've given us so many tips already?
I think the 3 top tips is, ahead of having your baby, so if you're pregnant right now, start talking about the support that you will need afterwards, and start putting solid plans in place. And don't just be like, hey, can you help me out when the baby comes? Be solid in what that looks like. Can you help me prep meals? Can you take the baby for a walk once a week, right? Have real solid action steps that can be put into practice. To put yourself joint first is absolutely one that I would put. And to talk. I know it sounds really simple, but like I talk openly and honestly with someone who feels safe to do so. And if you don't feel like you have somebody in your support network, or you're not sure, it just doesn't feel safe enough for you, don't feel like you have the self-worth to, go to a therapist and and make sure you're going to a qualified and accredited therapist as well. So in the UK, you have the UKCP and the BACP. They're the 2 accreditation bodies that I know of in the UK that will give you a directory of all therapists in your area, because what they can do is help hold space, but also you're paying them a service. So you can't hold space for them. So you're paying, so it means you're more likely to use it, but then also it can help you get the words, get the vocabulary, understand yourself. So then if you do want to come out and talk to somebody else, you feel like you've some of the prep done and you're able to articulate yourself. That maybe gives you a bit more confidence going into it.
Oh, I love that. So powerful. Yeah, there's different types of help for different needs and different personalities and different relationships, and it's so important that we find the one that works for us. Jean, where can people find you? Because I'm sure anyone listening has now realized that they need to hear more of you and more of your wisdom. Where can we find you?
The best ways would be on Instagram. So it's at Jean Your Best Self, and you spell Jean JEAN, Your Best Self.
And we've also linked that in the episode description. Thank you so much, Jean. Are they asleep?
Thank you. I know, I can hear rumbling downstairs, so I'll just stay up here doing some work to be happy for a while.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
If you have listened to this birth story, enjoyed it, and feel that you are ready to really embrace and dedicate yourself to having the most informed, supported, and empowered journey, and want to see if we may be able to support you in YPJ, your pregnancy and postnatal journey, please drop me a Instagram DM at midwife_pip, or get in touch on my email, pip@midwifepip.com, and let's chat through things and see if we might be a good match for each other. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and wishing you all the best on your journey through pregnancy, birth, and beyond.